Today in this video, we're going to talk about the proper posture when using a polishing machine. How do you properly grip a polishing machine? What should you pay attention to? And now the most important part, how should the polishing machine rest on the paint? Can you also angle it a bit? Can you just tilt it a bit to the left and right? Does that have any disadvantages or advantages? How do you achieve a nice even result? And how should it ideally look? And when does it sometimes not work out properly? Today, everything about holding a polishing machine correctly, the right stability, the right handling. And I'm going to show you that in the video now. Let's go. Short and to the point. Here we have our test area. Today, it's less about scratches and the right polish selection. Now it's more about the posture of the polishing machine. You've brought your model home, whichever one it is. Feel free to reach out to me if you need tips and tricks. Otherwise, this is just, for example, the Pro. I still had this one here from one of the last videos, a medium pad and a medium strength polish. But that's not really crucial for the right posture, because here it's important to look at what kind of machine I have. Here, in this case, it's a large corded one, but still compact. That means we have a point of attack here at the front, at the head. That's why it's also rubberized. And we have the back of the polishing machine here, and in this specific case, we also have a rest for the hand at the back, in case you want to grip it all the way back to stabilize it a bit differently. That's why it's also a bit recessed on the side here. It's completely up to you how you hold the machine. Most of you are probably right-handed, but it's completely the same for left-handed people. The machine is perfectly symmetrical, which means you don't have any grip indentations that are specifically designed for right-handed users. That means you grip with your left hand. I'm just going to pull my sweater up a bit so you can see better. So left hand at the front on the head. Some place their hand like this. You can do it however you want. There's no right or wrong here. It's important that you don't touch the backing plate with your fingers down here. That's clear. But otherwise, you can now place your hand here at the front on the head. That's the most typical position, holding the horn like this at the front. Others grip like this or with 2 fingers or so. But pay attention to this. You see, this can be a bit dangerous here with big hands. Just make sure you don't get your little finger too close. Nothing should happen initially. You won't get pulled in or anything like that, but we don't want to get near any rotating parts. But you can do it like that. Some also grip with 3 fingers here at the front, or like this or that. I have to be honest, you can check out my video. I think I mostly grip like this, but I also catch myself using this hand position sometimes. It's completely different. You can do it however you want. The same goes for the back of the polishing machine. Up here you have this rubberized area. I haven't seen anyone polish like that who grips at the front. It's kind of strange because here you have your thumb, and you can already see from the natural position that if the thumb goes forward, you automatically slide back onto the surface. That means you actually grip it, back here where this textured area is. Some grip from above like this. It also depends on whether you're working on the side of the vehicle or up here on the surface. If I just stand normally, I'm going to grip like I would. I'm gripping it like this. So, the most natural grip you can actually take. But you've also seen me resting my hand back here and holding the machine like that. It works just the same. That's why it was specifically designed that way. Everyone can do what they want. But I think this is the most natural thing. And now there are other machines, and we're going to take a look at those. I'll take this one here, the 15, as a representative of the long machine. Again, here at the front, the horn or the head, you can call it whatever you want. Here, you can grip it like this or like this or like that. It's completely up to you. What's important here at the back is that it's a bit different. I don't know anyone who grips here. Everyone grips at the handle. Some also grip very far back. I've caught myself doing this too, where I kind of wrap my fingers around here like a ring at the back because the cable is still attached back here. So the natural grip always goes here. That's why everything here is rubberized. That means I grip here, like this, and then I usually slide back about 2 centimeters and have everything right in my grip. So here's the switch and here's the lock. Let's take a look at the next machines. I've brought 2 battery polishers with me, and first we'll take the Evo Mini. Here you can see this one doesn't have a horn attached. These small battery polishers are just much narrower and more manageable. Here we also have a nice large grip area. There are people who grip it here. Most people will grip back here because the battery is basically part of the handle, and here is simply the on and off switch. They then place their 4 fingers on the top of the head and control the speed with their thumb. But you can also rest your hand on top here. You can hold the machine like this. You can do it however you want. There's no right or wrong here. It always depends on what feels most comfortable for you. And when I quickly take the machine in my hand and grip it naturally, I always have my fingers up front. Here I control the speed, and that's how I work with the machine on the surface. Let's take another model, the PXE80 here from Flex. And here you have a point, for example, that the area back here is raised, and this is actually the grip point. Here is actually the handle neck. Personally, I think it's better if it's a bit further back. That means you'll often see me working like this, where I take the back part completely in my hand and work like that. Place your hand on the front here, control the speed here, and then most people work like that. I've really seen it quite often. People usually grip back here instead of up front, because then you have the battery pack back here which moves around a bit. And this is especially true in places where you can't really see, especially at the door or at any transitions. Most people grip back here. Watch this, because they just want the protection back here so they don't hit anything with this rear part. Pay attention. Very few people grab it here. Instead, they grip back here and polish like that. Really pay attention to this. Especially for beginners, I always advise not to go wild here on the surface. And the sentence sounds a bit strange, but it contains all the information you need. Back and forth and racing around. Back and forth means please, don't polish. 2001? We can already see the problem here on the track. It's just a wild mess. You didn't even get to this spot with the polishing machine. You didn't hit anything here. There's no polish that made it to this corner. That means you have a very uneven polishing result. And that's why, this crosshatch variation. You should also incorporate this a bit into your technique from the start, so you don't end up adopting this chaos. And that's why, regarding the movement directions, I would always recommend this crosshatch technique, which I'll show you now, but a bit faster, not at original speed. So, I think you can see it well. We have a much more even sampling of the paint. We reached everywhere with the polishing pad where we wanted to go, in the area we were working on. And that's how you can do it easily. Up, down, left, right. In tight spots like pillars, move left to right, adjusting your pad to cover top, middle, and bottom. On flat surfaces like hoods or roofs, ensure even coverage for uniform results. If uneven, repeat the process. But here on such an even surface, like the hood, the roof, or the fender, you should really pay attention to hitting everything as evenly as possible, because then we know that we've gone over here, here, and there just as often, to achieve the most uniform result. Because if that's not the case, we need to go over it again. We've already been here, and we don't want that. So, make sure to stick to these cross-references as much as possible, especially in areas where you have a lot of space. And now we've already worked on that point back and forth. So, we just want to avoid this chaos. And now we come to the topic of speed. Please, this is now at original speed. Please don't polish like that. That's not polishing, that's just spreading polish. The paint stays completely cool. The polish can hardly spread in the pad because everything is just happening way too fast. It can't work for too long. That's why you should give this system, polishing pad, polish, and machine, a little time to work here. There should be a slight warmth, not heat. It should really get a bit lukewarm, around 2001. It can always get warm, but then you should go a bit slower. But definitely, it shouldn't stay ice cold here, otherwise you won't have any friction at all, because you can really feel it when you're polishing, and I'm going to turn it up to the highest setting. The paint is ice cold, so it couldn't have worked at all in such a short time. Now let me take you through the process step by step, demonstrating precisely how it should be executed correctly. I will maintain the original speed throughout this demonstration, to ensure that you can follow along easily and understand the nuances of each action. It's important to note that the paint, which is a crucial element in this process, is not just warm, but is at a temperature that is comfortably lukewarm. This ensures optimal application and adherence to the surface, providing a smooth and even finish. By keeping the paint at this specific temperature, we avoid any issues that might arise from it being too hot or too cold, which could affect the quality of the final result. So, as we proceed, pay close attention to these details, as they are vital for achieving the desired outcome. Remember, the key is in the details, and by following these guidelines, you can ensure that the task is completed to the highest standard. It could work much better now, much more effectively. You need to give it some time. That's one of the most common mistakes I see with participants in the workshops, that they just rush over it way too quickly. Maybe also out of respect, because they're afraid that they might damage the paint somehow or polish it too much. But I've already made a lot of videos about that. That's why you should really give it some time, because it doesn't help you to do 20 cross passes at an extremely high speed. Better to do 2 or 3 cross passes with a proper slow movement. Always check the heat to make sure it doesn't get too intense. And then you can work perfectly and save time. And that's what it's all about. We don't want to spend half a day on the hood just because you're rushing over it. And that's why I'm showing you this in such a practical way. Now, the last point that also matters is the correct positioning of the polishing machine regarding the angle of inclination, meaning the contact area here on the surface. For that, you go down a floor, and now you can also look up from the side a bit better. We now have a completely flat surface, which means we can actually tilt the machine in many, many directions. 2001 means we can place the pad like this, we can angle the pad here, we can tilt it to the left and to the right. The most common mistake happens especially when people are standing in front of the vehicle. Imagine you're standing right here in front of the vehicle, polishing up here and getting to this area. What do most people do? They start to tilt the machine backward. And when they're polishing towards themselves and realize, oh, I don't have any more space, they start to lift the back end, and then suddenly you have a lot of air underneath. So, we don't want to tilt it. They're towards yourselves or away from yourselves. Watch that. Get a second person to help you. They should look at it from the side, and then you might see that you're moving the machine towards yourself the whole time, and then you're practically tilting it like that. And when you move it away from yourself and are as far back as possible, you start to lower the back end, and then the pad doesn't polish, and it gets a very, very strong one-sided load. We don't want that. We always want to be as flat as possible. And how do you see that now? It's really simple. I'll show you. You see the 2 paths? We have path 1. We have path number 2. And this path clearly shows you whether you've angled the pad or not. You have the full pad width on the surface. When you angle the machine, it looks different. I'll show it to you now. Here I was still nice and even on the surface. The path stays nice and wide from the pad. And now here you see how it gets narrow. Now it gets narrower. I'll trace it out. Here I angled it, and back here I was straight again. So if you draw your path here and you see that the polish suddenly becomes really narrow from the path, then you've basically shifted the pad. Of course, it can also go in that direction. Here you can also see it nicely from above, how it gets really narrow here. Here I've basically angled it, tilted the pad. Up here, it went up, barely made contact with the paint, and therefore couldn't work here at all. And here on such a surface, it's easy to do. But what is, for example, when I'm here at a side door? And you also need to choose your pad size accordingly, so you can work the area perfectly. I'll show you another example here with the narrow column using an ER pad. First of all, from the width, you can see that it can actually work well. But now you can see it from the side. Look how the pad wobbles back and forth. And that's simply because the surface isn't completely flat, but rather has a nice curve here. And that's why an ER pad would actually be the right size here. Oh, but not for the curvature. And that's why we're using a smaller pad, and it sits completely flat. Do you see this? You can hardly move it back and forth, and now you have here path 1, path 2, path 3. And that way, the pad sits cleanly on the surface, can work perfectly, and won't be unevenly loaded, so you can really glide over these surfaces nicely. So always adjust the pad size to the area. And I think that was a lot of information, but I just want to prepare it as comprehensively as possible for you, so you have a perfect guide with the videos. And now you know where to best grip such a machine, or where to place your hand. But I also want to say, it's completely up to you. Make it as comfortable as possible for you, but there are different options depending on whether you're polishing on a surface or working on the side of the vehicle. Then you also saw the polishing speed. That means, how do I move the machine? Back and forth, but nice and evenly. It's also important at the start to ensure that you work all areas evenly and don't have any spots that you need to go over again. Then also a reminder about tilting, so don't let the machine tip over. You want to move it nice and evenly. You can best see this by looking at the path you're polishing, whether the line behind it is just as wide as the polishing pad or if it gets narrower. If it does, then you've tilted the machine. So, I've included a lot of tips in this video. If you have any questions about that, just drop them in the comments below. I can definitely shoot a second part if you want answers to specific things, just let me know, and I'll try to incorporate that into my series in this polishing knowledge guide. Until next time, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out via WhatsApp or here in the comments. You're Sebastian 2001. Hey guys, see you in the next video.